Hey, Thrasher here. Welcome everybody watching this video. I just wanted to use this as an opportunity for you to review some algebra that's going to be very helpful in our physics class. All right, how do we solve equations when it's not as obvious? It's not simply acceleration equals. What if I don't want the acceleration? What if I want the velocity or the time? So that's what we're going to look at, okay? I have this broken up into two parts. First, what happens when I have an algebraic equation? And here's an algebra equation right there. What happens if I want to solve for something that's in the numerator? The numerator is what's at the top of the fraction. So right now, this d, the distance, that's what's in the numerator. So if I have that equation, how do I go about solving it if I want the distance? So again, I always start with the original equation, distance over time. Now, I don't want the velocity. Here, if you read this question, it says to calculate the distance. So I want this thing over here. On the right side of my equation, I have distance divided by time. I don't want time there. I just want distance all by itself. So how do I get rid of the distance if it's currently being divided? I kind of do the opposite. The opposite of dividing by time is multiply. If I multiply by time, that's nice. Those two things are going to cancel out. Just like 3 divided by 3 cancels out. I don't have to worry about it. Time divided by time cancels. But whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side. So if I multiplied the right by time, I have to multiply the left by time. So what am I left with? Time multiplied by that velocity is equal to d. Oh, okay, now we're good to go. Because I'm looking for a distance, all I need to do is take the time, and what is the time according to the question? Oh, 5 seconds. And multiply it by the velocity. What's the velocity? 35. Bam, I could do that multiplication, and then I can get my final answer. So if you want to solve for something in the numerator, you're probably going to multiply both sides by what's on the bottom. You got to do a little bit of algebra, right? So there's an algebra example for solving for something that's on the top, okay? Now the other example, and it's the more difficult example, is what happens if you want to solve for something that's in the bottom. So notice, if I wanted to solve for time, that's in the denominator. That's right here. I can't do the same trick as before, okay? Or at least I should say it takes a little more time, a little more algebra time. Now, if you want to find something in the denominator, and we do that fairly often in this class, I have a trick for you. Before I actually show you the algebra, I want to show you a trick that I think is helpful for students. If I want to know what time is, I want an equation for time based on this velocity equation here, well, the trick is I can pretend to grab what's on the bottom, what I have in the bottom, that time, the denominator, and I pretend to grab whatever I have on the left. You can't see my hands, but I'm pretending to grab each one with my left hand here and my right hand here. I grab them, and then the trick is I flip them. I pretend like I just swap their places. I grab those two things, what's on the bottom, what's on the left, and I change their places. So what it ends up looking like is what you see down here. So I grab V, I grab T, and I change their place. Notice, distance didn't change. It's the same thing as before. Distance is still on top. Distance was on top to start with. But the V was on the left, now the V is on the bottom. The time was on the bottom, now it's on the left. And now I could plug in. If I continue doing this problem, now I'd read the question. Okay, let's see, I need the distance. What's the distance here? Oh, 9.3. So that equals 9.3 divided by the velocity, 1.5. Punch that into your calculator. You could get your answer with your unit of seconds. So you grab them and you flip them. The nice thing is that always works. As long as you're grabbing everything that's on the left and everything that's in the denominator and you flip them, it even works for our acceleration equation. Any equation where you have something on the left and something on the bottom. So that's what a lot of my students remember. They say, okay, they think in their head, I grab them and I flip them. So here's that acceleration equation. You could maybe flip those places. So now t is on the left and a is here. This is great if you needed to use this equation, but you wanted to solve for the time. So there's my recommendation. Okay, if you're maybe not as familiar with acceleration, or I'm sorry, if you're not as familiar with algebra as other students, remember that. You grab them and you flip them. Now, the last thing I want to do is maybe a little optional, but I do want to work through the why. Why does this work? If you're like, I'm just going to remember this little trick that Thrasher taught me. Great, maybe you end the video. But why does this work out? I'm going to work through the algebra right here. Not that you have to show this. You don't have to. If you just remember to grab and swap, that's fine. I'll take that in my class. But what's going on? If I'm trying to get t all by itself, it's in the denominator. It's in the bottom. I can't just divide by d. I would still be left with t on the bottom. So to get t out of the bottom, I'm going to multiply both sides by t, kind of like I did before. It does cancel out over here, but I'm left with t. I'm not going to change colors this time. Equals t times v, because I still have that v, equals d. Okay, but remember, I'm trying to solve for the time. I don't want time multiplied by velocity. So what would my next step be? Well, maybe now I divide out that velocity. If I divide out the velocities cancel. So now I have time equals distance divided by velocity. So there's the algebra if I was trying to solve for time. And notice, oh my gosh, it's the same thing. That's why that trick works. Okay, it doesn't work because this fundamentally is a rule of algebra, but right here, this is algebra. And that always works out. So again, if you can do the algebra, great, no worries. Or just remember, you grab them and you flip them. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for watching.